Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I am very well, Mr. Solomon, for this Monday, the 12th of May, a rather auspicious day today
An August,
in the monthly calendar.
August occasion in the middle of May.
It's an August occasion indeed. Happy birthday to you, Ellio Solomon.
Yeah, man, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Hope you had a great day, and that was preceded by a great weekend.
Yeah, it was a good day, and I really appreciate it. You know, all the friends calling you, texting you, and
That's good.
Doing little things to embarrass you, which of course, in the spirit of transparency, perhaps the final blow for the day comes from you. Austin Harris went out and bought me a cheesecake.
Yes. Well, I had to do a little something for you.
I told you I'm trying to get rid of this little gut I have here, and there you are helping me out by giving me a cheesecake.
I saw you doing, the push-ups during the break last week, and I thought, well, we can't have that healthy activity going in the studio.
How can we ruin that?
That might be catching. Let's fix that quickly.
It's like the devil himself.
It is.
Okay. Poof. Compares on your shoulder. Poof.
Next thing you know, I'll be doing sit-ups. Oh, my God. What's up?
Hey, well, I've always been telling you about your onion tea and drink a little bit of oil. You got to share that with the public sometime.
So
hey, he's killing me in here.
How old are you now?
I'm 56.
56. You see,
I look like 45, right?
I was going to put candles on the cake,
joking.
but I wasn't quite sure. I don't
think you can hold 56 on this.
Well, I wasn't going to put candles. When you get the numbers,
oh, yeah, okay,
makes
yeah.
it a lot less.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll get 56 candles
no,
on that little cheesecake. But I did think 55 was the number I had in my mind. I
was 55.
By that much.
I was 55.
You was 56.
I guess what you were trying to say indirectly is a compliment. Like, whatever it is, Ellio, it hasn't moved. The dial hasn't moved.
Well, you don't look
Thank
56. You. I mean, again, we talk about,
Keep it coming.
Our former life together, which seems like such a long time ago, but you really,
yeah, I still the same, right?
You still look the same.
A little more spots of gray, and that's it.
But not even that. You look fantastic for a 56-year-old guy. You never know.
Oh, Austin, what am I going to do with you?
I don't know. Keep me, I guess. Nobody else will have me.
That's why I came back and got you.
That's right. Nobody else will have me. Thank God you came back and found me.
Let's see, all the pain and suffering I've been through, who can I find? I know.
I know. I haven't annoyed him in a few years.
X amount of years. There. But anyway, sincerely, though, it's been a great birthday and hasn't ended yet.
Nope.
And I just want to thank you.
You're very welcome, my friend.
From the bottom of my heart for the cheesecake. Not so much for the cheesecake. It's a thought, Because I know it's a sinful suggestion you're making with the cheesecake, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, I heard you like cheesecake, and I had to get you something. I never know what to get you in terms of gifts, but I figure a cheesecake, you will enjoy it, you will consume it, and maybe you might share it. I did think about getting you ice cream, but, ice cream melts, and then we'd have to be forced to eat it this evening. And, well, again, that goes against both of our diet plans.
Both of us eating out of the ice cream. Hopefully with 2 spoons.
Indeed.
No, I appreciate it.
Well, I would encourage the listening audience to pick up the phone and, 745-2626. All of you out there who know and love my colleague, don't be shy. Pick up the phone and give him a call. Say happy birthday.
Oh, what kind of thing are you encouraging on this program, Austin?
I don't know. Maybe a sing-along, something like that.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a nice day, and I want to say that Mother's Day passed on Sunday. It was good for me. Went to the church on Sunday morning. Well, I normally go to a different church, but I missed my church and went to her church. Okay. And then I had the chance to give a nice tribute. And that was really, really great because not every day do we have an opportunity to praise your mom in a very public way, to give her the flowers while she's still alive. So it was a wonderful occasion. I hope that other persons took the time out to do something similar.
Yes.
Even in our small way. I'm sure we all took our time out to pay tribute to the mother, the wife, the daughters, etc.
Yes, it was a nice weekend all around, and I'm sure your mother also appreciated the time you spent with her, as did certainly all of the mothers. Hope everyone who calls themselves mom had a wonderful Mother's Day this past weekend, and again, it's that special time of year.
Yeah. Well, again, sharing a little bit of my story, one of the places where I spent a lot of time in church as a younger man is the I guess they call it the Fawcett Church, right? The one right out by the waterfront.
The Fossey?
That's what I always heard. Don't ask me, don't quote me on all that. But anyway, it's for Mr. Tommy Borden, the one that runs the church. But
what an outstanding preacher Mr. Tommy is.
Well, he's an outstanding man.
I mean,
he's a wonderful person.
I love to hear his sermons. I had an opportunity to hear, I think, 2 of them in recent years. And strong man of God, powerful prayer warrior, and to your point, an absolute gem of a human being.
Well, I remember going to that church when you're young, and trust me, in those days it was like, come here, check it. Let me see your shirt. Check it, man. Hey, then to feel the top of your head. That's right. This head is hot. You didn't take a shower. Pow. And then I had to walk to church, shoes squeaking. Squeaking. You know, one that burns the back of your heel or something because it's too new or something.
Oh, yes.
And then I spent a lot of time in there. And, of course, you get in there again yesterday, which I've frequented a couple of months ago as well, or a couple of weeks ago as well. But you get in there and you start saying, I remember the church being bigger than this.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Do you have a home church, a church that you call, are you a regular?
Well, I have 2 churches that I'm regular. Again, that would be the church that I'm talking about. No, I go there every now and then with my parents, and I've been going to a lot of times to UPC, which is All Nations down in the Washington Boulevard, aka Swamp.
Yes.
But I don't, I kind of float around. Yeah. Kind of a bit of a nomad.
UPCS, United Pentecostal, right?
United Pentecostal Church. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Let's talk about spirited. I love when they're singing and stuff, man. The energy up in there, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's unmatched. Yeah. You got to try it.
I will.
But it was a good service. It was a good Sunday, and I really enjoy it. And just being there and seeing all of these children giving tributes and stuff to their mom, it was just really, heartwarming.
I bet, and probably was very well attended.
It
Sunday
was packed in there.
Yeah, standing room only.
And I think I'm putting a little bit of words in Mr. Tom's mouth, but I think basically what he was saying is you all can pretend that Mother's Day is every Sunday.
That's right.
Because keep that crowd coming.
Yes.
But it was really good. Yep.
Excellent. Well, it was a happy weekend. Today is a happy day as we celebrate happy birthday for my good friend and fellow co-host, Ellio Solomon. The phone lines are open. If you haven't reached out to him yet today but want to, you still can by dialing 745-2626. I'm sure he would love to hear from you. We have other good news to start off this Monday, the 12th of May. And, of course, what better one to start off with than a news item that really appeared last week. I think it was last week, Friday, this occurred. But for whatever reason, we didn't have a chance to mention it. But we have the first Royal Cayman Islands Police Service helicopter pilot.
Oh, yeah.
Captain Darren McLean has become that first Caymanian to fly the police helicopter. Want to send out a big congratulations to him, but an even bigger congratulations to his father, Mr. Buster. You will recall Darren came back to Cayman with the qualifications. There was an expectation that he would, fall nicely right into the left seat of the helicopter. There was a bit of back and forth. Some would call it controversy. I think legitimately so. The police made a legitimate point was, it's one thing to come back with the qualifications as a helicopter pilot, but given the, the strategic, somewhat tactical use of the helicopter in police operations, there was a bit of a learning curve required there too. And whilst there was some posturing in that exercise, Darren obviously submitted himself to that training. And on Friday, I won't say the deputy governor pinned wings on him, but he's certainly got, his dream, or at least the first leg of that dream, and that is to fly the only helicopter in Cayman for the use of the general public. And I want to congratulate Darren McLean on finally acquiring the necessary or requisite hours and subsequent training that allows him to fly the Eurocopter police helicopter. I'm sure he looks great behind the stick.
Yeah, and now is that going to be something? Well, I guess you probably don't know, but I'm guessing you have more than one pilot to keep alternating.
Well, as I understand it, there are two pilots. Right. There may be as many as three. I don't know what the air operations, complement of pilots are, but he will obviously become the first Caymanian to join those ranks, and that is always encouraging when, again, we see Caymanians filling roles that previously...
Going to new heights, shall we say.
Going to new heights. Pardon the pun.
Pardon the pun.
Pardon the pun.
But, I definitely want to join chorus with you and again, praise Darren for his accomplishments. And I'll tell you, that causes me to want to share some of my flying experience because I'm not one for heights, right?
Okay. Me neither, really.
No, I'm not for heights. I'm the guy that will be on 17 stories and I'll get on my stomach and crawl to the edge. Okay, that's just me. So anyway, I couldn't picture me flying the helicopter, but it does cause me to say, one, my older brother used to fly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll never forget.
That's Tim, right?
Tim, yeah.
Yes.
So I'll never forget Mr. Roy McTaggart, who is now, in the PPM. But he and I used to work KPMG together.
Okay.
Comes to me one day. I don't think I'm taking too many tales out of school here. He says, Ellio, want to fly to the BRAC with me? I'm like, how are we going to fly to the BRAC? Yeah, I got a little private plane. And I wasn't thinking. Uh-huh. And I signed up for that.
Oh
my God.
Were you breathing into the bag all the way over?
Nothing to do with his flying. But,
right.
These little planes.
Yes.
It's like the wind blows and it felt
feel
like
everything.
Oh, my God. It felt like we're barely moving and then the wind blows and it feels like you went back 2 miles, right?
Yes.
I'm like, oh, no, never again. So anyway, luckily he knew what he was doing and he felt comfortable. So that allowed me to survive. But it's something that, I don't know, it takes a certain type of person to get up in the plane and fly, right?
Yes, yes.
I guess you get used to it. Enough flight simulators, I have no idea. But somehow I can tell you, though, on a serious note, it is something going on because the human mind, in my opinion, cannot fathom how high you are when you're in a plane. Mm-hmm. Because you and I both know, if we get to the edge of a 30-story building and I put you there and look over, your knees go weak, you want to puke. Mm-hmm. But that's not happening on the plane, right? We're walking around, we're eating, chips. And so somehow your mind is unable to really grasp how high you are.
Well, in a commercial jet, certainly you don't feel it.
And a commercial jet.
But in that little private Cessna, as you say, you feel every bump, every single foot you climb.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every little puff of cloud.
That's right. That's right.
Sounds like you had experience, Austin.
Well, speaking of...
But your brother does something to do with...
Well, speaking of pilots and congratulating them, I also want to congratulate my nephew, Robert Michael Harris.
Okay.
The firstborn child to my younger brother, Rob. He just completed his commercial pilot's licensing.
I'm glad we continued this discussion.
Yes, so am I. And it just reminded me that I didn't, say congratulations to my nephew.
Congrats. What's his name?
Robert Michael.
All right, Robert Michael, congratulations.
Yes, we're very, very proud of him, and hopefully we
won't be flying with him, mind you.
No.
Not in any small ones, that's for sure. So is he going to be flying the big commercial ones eventually, or?
Well, as I understand it, obviously the finding employment and all that has started. I'm hoping he'll get an opportunity with the National Flag Carrier. Okay. And if he does, then all new pilots start the same. They start out on the Twin Otter, then maybe move to the Saab.
You got to rack up all the hours.
Period of time. Just like Darren, just because you got the license and theoretically you have the academic and practical knowledge of how to fly, but you start at square one whenever you find employment and
get the
experience. So I'm hoping that the National Flag Carrier does, in fact, hire him. And if so, one day, I'm sure he'll, advance to the jet. And because he's my nephew, I'm going to have to, make one or two trips to the BRAC because, everybody else on my immediate side of the family have flown with him when he was in Florida for flight school.
Okay.
I didn't join that. I figured, immediate family, don't want to rain on their parade or
jump on
their,
a little better.
Jump on their bandwagon. Let him enjoy that.
Right.
But certainly, if he does fly for the national flag carrier, then I will be going to Cameron more often. And we've been talking about doing it for a while. So maybe in the course of our plans as they unfold, maybe one day we'll fly on a plane, that same, puddle jumper, bumping clouds and whatnot. We can console each other.
Yeah. Well, that one's a little bit bumpy too, but obviously not as bad as the little smaller Cessna. But yeah. But congratulations to him, and it's just amazing to see. I don't want to call them kids, probably don't like that, but the younger ones just growing up and seeing them all achieve all these things, and I think that's that leads me on to something else, right? Mm-hmm. This is the Cayman that I remember in terms of being able to really have a positive society. You'd be able to knock on your neighbor's door that you didn't really know. Can I use your phone? They probably even offered you something to eat. Mm-hmm. And I think for a myriad of reasons, Austin, quotation marks, I think that we're kind of getting now where you have all of this, negativity that's in the air. It's like, let's see who gets their ass whipped today kind of mentality.
Yep.
And I really think that that's sad, because what I definitely think we need of more in this country is a little bit more encouragement, a little bit more elevation of people, our culture, our traditions. That's what we need more of.
Yes.
And not the opposite.
Yeah, not the tearing down of each other that we seem to get such great joy in doing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of flying, today seems to if you talk about flying, you got to it has to come in threes. So we see in the headlines.
That's today, a very good one, Austin.
It has to come in threes. Delta Airlines will be introducing a new nonstop service between New York's JFK, or John F. Kennedy International Airport, and Grand Cayman as of Christmas. Launching on the 20th of December this year and running until the 11th of April next year. The seasonal service will operate once weekly on Saturdays between JFK and Owen Roberts International Airport. That announcement by Delta comes shortly after its decision to also reinstate nonstop flights from Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport to Grand Cayman, which will also begin on the 20th of December this year. Together, the two routes will strengthen the destination's connectivity with key U.S. markets, both Detroit and JFK Newark. So, again, we want to say how exciting news that is. And if you ever wanted to fly to New York without having to stop over in Chicago or here or elsewhere, well, now you can as of the 20th of December. And I believe tickets will go on sale for that flight, which again launches on the 20th of December, sometime this week. I think the 16th of May is where I read that those tickets may be purchased. So if you're a New York fan, or, certainly just want to do a little traveling in someplace new, well, as of December this year, you'll have at least another opportunity to do so, and doing so nonstop. Compliments of Delta. Other good news, the Cayman Islands men's national football team is set to return to the international stage with two pivotal fixtures as part of their World Cup qualifying efforts in the CONCACAF second round of the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifiers in June. As the campaign intensifies, the team will face Bermuda on the 4th of June at the National Sports Center in Devonshire, and then they will come back home for a clash between Honduras and the Cayman Islands on the 7th of June, which will take place at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex in Georgetown. These matches mark a critical juncture in Cayman's journey through the qualifying stage as they seek to make history by advancing to the third and possibly final round of regional play. Certainly want to extend significant good wishes for Team Cayman and their efforts to qualify for the upcoming World Cup 2026. We do have at least one, looks like two comments from our WhatsApp line. Let's see if we can take them. Maybe someone singing you happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Let's go to the phone lines.
I'm sending birthday greetings out to you guys. I hope you guys keep up the great job. I really enjoy listening to you guys talk show. It's Mr. Ellio and Mr. Austin.
Thank you very much. Well, no happy birthday, but
it sounds like a new voice.
It does sound like a new voice. He has contributed several times through the WhatsApp traditional text message. I think this is the first time he's sharing a voice note with us, so we want to thank him for calling in and being a part of that. Of course, the phone lines are open this Monday. No guests slated for this show today. Again, you have two options when you want to call in. You can either reach us at 745-2626 or our version of our 1-800 number by dialing our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. We do have one more audio note. Let's go to it now.
Hi, good afternoon, Austin and Ellio. Well, you asked for some call-ins, and you know I have to call in and say happy birthday, Ellio. Wishing you all the best for another wonderful and beautiful, healthy year ahead. I also wanted to share something quite interesting, perhaps to your listeners, is that the National Gallery has a display called Time Back, which showcases so many historical photographs of the Cayman Islands. Ellio, given that you love the history so much, perhaps you can find your way over there for your birthday or the next few days. But I want to encourage your listeners to visit the National Gallery, have a look at those beautiful old photographs and exhibits from the past. Take care, and I'll be listening to your show as always. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sweetheart.
And I'm glad she mentioned, of course, the Time Back, I think you said it is. This is a collaboration, again, another contribution from the DART organization. Of course, persons may recall DART purchased Compass Media, and I guess by accident, they found the Compass archive, which contained really a treasure trove of pictures back when to the Compass, when it first started publishing. And DART engaged in a project, a really monumental project, and you really have to tip, your hat to them for doing so. They're going to obviously digitize these pictures, which were obviously taken in originals. They're going to, take photos of them, make a digital copy of them, and then I forget whether they were going to release either 5 or 10. I don't remember how many per week or per month, whatever the case may be. It is a project, an ongoing project, led by the DART organization and the Compass Media Group. I think it's a fantastic and invaluable service to the Cayman Islands by allowing us to take a trip down memory lane. I think it will serve a huge value to our historical context. Certainly the National Archive will be interested in it. And again, I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I want to congratulate the DART Group, Compass Media, and all of those who have been involved in that project. I think it's, a step in the right direction.
No, absolutely. I definitely have seen some of the photographs. It's totally awesome when you see it, taking that trip down memory lane. And I remember it causes me to reflect on you and I doing the vision stuff.
Yes.
Because again, it's one thing to see pictures. It's another thing to be able to hear people telling their stories, in person.
Really enjoyed being a part of that project. And for those persons that are listening on us who have no idea what we're talking about, we would, host interviews with, how should we say, the matriarchs and patriarchs of the Cayman community.
You did Miss Julia Hyde, for example.
Hydes. Yes. I mean, these are persons, obviously, they were up there in age when we interviewed them, and the thought process was, let's capture them in timeless video whilst we still have them an opportunity to hear their thoughts in their own words as they look back as well as look forward. It was a fantastic project. I was privileged to be a part of it. I think it was the former president of UCCI who coined the phrase, "Love these lovely vignettes of the past." What a fantastic vocabulary Mr. Roy Bodden has always continued to have, and I'll never forget it was the first time I ever heard that word vignette, but
I like it. It's a good word. You're coming with your flowery words.
It's a good word. Just one more quick bit of good news before we pause and take a break. The Westminster All-Party Parliamentary Group, which is designed to foster good relations between the UK Parliament and the Cayman Islands, has once again restarted after a gap of at least 1 year. It was dissolved when the UK general election was held last May, but did not restart under the new Labour government in July. The cross-party group provides a valuable forum to bring together parliamentarians from different political parties to discuss issues of shared interest and is an important platform to inform policymakers about developments in the Cayman Islands as well as developments in the motherland of the United Kingdom. So, again, grateful for those persons involved in that exercise to bring the all-party parliamentary group back together. It is 58 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, and we have to pause, take a short commercial break, check in with your top global news brought to you by the BBC. But when we return, Open Mic Monday continues here on Straight Talk. The number to call, 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. Don't change that dial. There'll be more Straight Talk next.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The Israeli-American hostage Idan Alexander has been reunited with his family in Israel, hours after being released from 19 months of captivity by Hamas. Television pictures show him smiling as he embraces his parents and siblings at an Israeli military base. At a news briefing, a hospital spokeswoman, Dr. Hagar Mizrahi, said he would receive the best medical and psychological care.
We are thrilled by the return of Idan Alexander after so many days in captivity. The entire Israeli healthcare system stands ready to provide Idan and his family with the best medical and psychological treatment and to embrace them.
There are renewed international calls for a ceasefire in Gaza in the wake of the latest hostage release. The International Committee of the Red Cross described the humanitarian crisis there as catastrophic. A famine alert system has been raised to its highest level, more than 2 months after Israel began blocking all aid deliveries to Gaza. Stéphane Dujarric, the spokesman for the UN Secretary-General, has called for an end to the fighting and the blockade.
The Secretary General renews his urgent call for an immediate, permanent ceasefire and an immediate and unconditional release of all remaining hostages. Hostages must be treated humanely and with dignity. He calls on all parties to immediately ensure the rapid, the unhindered, and the safe humanitarian relief, including the delivery of critical services for all civilians in need. Aid in Gaza and anywhere around the world is not negotiable.
US markets have surged to their highest level in several months in response to major tariff cuts agreed by China and the United States. The Dow Jones closed up by 2.8%. Early on Monday, the two sides announced an easing of a trade war that's caused global economic turmoil. Dozens of white South Africans have arrived in the United States, where the government is to grant them refugee status. President Trump has claimed the white farmers were escaping persecution, which the South African government denies. Our correspondent Nomi Iqbal says rights groups have accused the Trump administration of discrimination.
Human Rights Watch have said that there are thousands of refugees. We're talking about black Africans, Afghan refugees, as we know, people who worked alongside Americans during the Afghanistan war as translators, interpreters who are at risk of reprisal from the Taliban. They've all been denied refugee status. And Human Rights Watch say to now see this radical U-turn by the Trump administration specifically for a group of white Afrikaners, they described it, to quote them, as a cruel racial twist.
BBC News. The UN Secretary-General has welcomed the announcement by Kurdish separatists of an end to 40 years of armed struggle against Turkey. Antonio Guterres said if the decision by the PKK was implemented, it would mark an important step towards peace. Turkey's neighbours, Syria and Iraq, also hailed the move. The PKK said it was disbanding because it hoped to achieve its goals through democratic means. The legislative body set up by Mali's military rulers has adopted a bill which critics fear will lead to an outright ban on all political parties. Earlier this month, there was a rare pro-democracy protest in the capital, Bamako. Mali's military ruler, General Assimi Goïta, then announced the temporary suspension of political party activity. The prosecution in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs has argued that the rapper and music producer used his status to commit acts of violence and blackmail his sexual partners. He's alleged to have kidnapped, drugged and coerced women into sex. Helena Humphreys outside the courthouse in New York.
The prosecution has been saying that this is part of a broader picture of a man who, over 2 decades, used that tremendous fame and power and wealth and influence to coerce people with the promise of romantic relationships, career success, financial backing, for example, and then force them with the use of forced drugs, violence, into taking part in these orgies that could go on for days. Now, Sean Diddy Combs has denied all of the allegations against him.
Australia's re-elected Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is due to be sworn in for a second term. His centre-left Labour Party defied the odds in a snap election earlier this month, winning a surprise majority. Key issues in the campaign included the cost of living and a struggling healthcare system. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, amen, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM on your radio dial. We're your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris, as the phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. We are broadcasting live from the Bobo Studios at 103.1 FM, but also simulcasting live on YouTube, Instagram, and on Facebook. On Facebook, we have both the Straight Talk radio show page as well as continuing to stream live on the ACT Cruise Tourism page. Again, we welcome our callers, our listeners to another program, and again, another start of a brand new week. We talked about the good news, as is something we like to begin each show with. Whenever possible, we begin with the good news of the day. But now at 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, a bit of bad news. We heard, or should I say read rather, on social media just this afternoon, that the former district commissioner for Cayman Brac, Mr. Ernie Scott, has in fact passed away. I was a bit shocked to read that news, but understand he had been suffering from a brief illness, and he succumbed to that illness this morning. And we would like to extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and close friends of the late Mr. Ernie Scott. Again, another fantastic human being who we
indeed
both had the pleasure to know. I will certainly remember him fondly. And again, we extend our sincere condolences to his family.
I want to say, Mr. Harris, I got a request from someone about speaking on the whole issue of foreign nationals or work permit holders and the need, the desire / the need to speak proper English.
Okay.
And I know that we had discussed this a little bit on the program, but perhaps we can just ventilate it again. If somebody else didn't know, it hasn't happened in a vacuum, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I mentioned it because I think when we initially brought it up, I said it definitely was one of the little pet peeves that I had, because I think you have certain jobs that, you know, maybe if the English isn't that great, you can probably let it slide. But in most circumstances, I mean, it is something that at the minimum becomes a little bit annoying. And maybe the public wants to chime in, love to hear their views as well. But, you know, I think it is a little bit annoying, to say the least, if you're trying to communicate, whether it's something as simple as ordering food or, you know, something even more complicated, and the person's really just can't understand what you're saying. And you know that we have a communication problem here, right? And, you know, the question is how do all these things get resolved? I remember that there would have been several months, maybe just a year or more, there was an issue where there's some person that had got caught in the immigration sort of umbrella for some kind of corrupt practices, you know, in terms of selling the test, if you like, selling an approval or a pass. And I believe that it has been stated to be remedied. It seems as if it's now been outsourced to somewhat of a more independent group, is the way I'm gathering it. It's definitely some completely new building there out to the waterfront, or a new location. Okay. And again, this is something I think that we would really like to follow up with Mr. Jeremy, who is, I think, in charge of WRC, who I would probably fall up under his remit. Yes. But the English testing thing, to me, is something that, you know, it is very serious. And when you always talk about the low-lying fruit, you know, there is another one. Because for someone to be asking me or you to speak about it, it is causing a lot of frustration in the society. And I don't think that this is just a case of, you know, what persons would accuse, oh, this is just racism. You're just a bunch of racists. No. I think it's a legitimate problem. And I have been there. I mean, and I can't even think of a specific job where you can say, okay, or that made me laugh. Forget that. Don't give me that stupid grin, Austin. I don't know what the hell to do.
I'm just glad you took the high road and the cautious road and said, you know what, I'm not going to tell you what I was thinking. It was when you start to laugh, it probably was not the appropriate thing.
Hey, I don't know what you're thinking, but the laugh is all because of that look you out of your face. I'm blaming on you, Austin. No. But seriously, there's There's some guy in the car with his wife right now saying, be serious, don't laugh at this guy. Don't laugh at these guys, you're going to get divorced. Anyway, the bottom. Don't laugh, guys. That's all I'm going to tell you.
I'm not even looking at you.
If you're with the significant other, you're going to have problems.
Look away.
So all I'm going to say is there's very few jobs that I can think of where proper communication is not Austin, I'm trying to work.
Right.
Yeah, turn around. I appreciate that, Austin.
Beautiful wall we have.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Austin. No, but there's very few jobs, right, that I can think of that, it's not, is that speaking, in this particular case, speaking the language, speaking English is not important. Because whether you're ordering food, you're in a construction site, you've heard me argue with one of my guys, right?
Yes.
It's like, I speak English.
Speak English, man.
Come on, man. Come on. Talk English.
Hilarious.
And so I don't know whether it's Spanish, patois. I don't care what it is. Like, let's just speak English.
Speak English, dude.
So all I can say is to commit again to try to see if we can perhaps reach out to WRC, maybe speak to Mr. German, see if we can find out what the deal is.
Yes. Well,
why it seems as if the problem has not been resolved in terms of getting people up to a certain scratch on the English. Or maybe they are reaching a certain scratch or grade, but maybe the grade needs to be elevated because it's not working from the sound of it. Would like to hear from anyone else if they think that they've experienced that problem. I would like to honestly hear from you. If not, I'll just assume that it is a problem because I've definitely got it from at least two persons talking about, the language barrier, to say the least.
No, indeed. Well, it is obviously an immigration work permit prerequisite. Persons coming here on a work permit should have the ability to speak English. And to prove that point, there is an English language test that all persons coming from jurisdictions where English is not the first language must submit themselves to and pass. But yes, you're absolutely right. There was a time where some of those tests and scores were being, corruptly or inappropriately approved. But supposedly that has been, that is now a thing of the past. But like many other things, this is simply, again, where we suffer and where we fall down the most in this country is an enforcement of our laws and or policies. This won't be the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last time, but you're absolutely right. You work in the Cayman Islands, you want to move to the Cayman Islands, we speak English in this country.
Yeah.
Though some might say a version of English with our accent and otherwise. But yeah, everyone should speak English. And in large part, everyone does. But there are certain quarters where, to your point, whether you're selling a service or otherwise, where you can't communicate with your service provider. And, well, that's...
and getting, every now and then, getting two words turned around, that can be kind of, amusing.
Yes.
But I think it's when you, at least from my perspective, is when you legitimately get into a communication issue, and this is like, you really are not understanding, what I'm trying to convey to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it challenging, to say the least. And you can see, if you were to have that in somewhat of an emergency situation, well, it could end a lot worse. Sorry, didn't understand the instructions.
Indeed. We do have a WhatsApp greeting for you, Mr. Solomon. Happy birthday, Sir Ellio. Wishing you abundant blessings from God on your birthday and beyond. May God's love be everything you need on this special day. You are an inspiration to all of us. We pray that your birthday is full of love and joy. May the year ahead also bring you endless blessings and good health. Have a wonderful birthday. God bless you.
Oh, that's very sweet. And I heard the sir in there, so
Sir Ellio.
It must be a genuine respect, because I know I didn't do anything to serve the British. So I haven't done anything that nice yet.
Well, that's going to be the surprise at the end of the show. We got the sword out and everything. We'll put you down on one knee, and you'll be Sir Ellio at the end of.
Oh Lord, yeah. The day you see that, I want to hear about that one.
You and me both.
I don't think that I'm in the top British fan club, to be quite honest with you. Not that I'm desiring to be.
Well, last week, as a matter of fact, Tuesday, the 6th of May, you will recall, and certainly will our listeners recall, that we came out with what we anticipated would be the ministerial positions or posts that would be assigned to the persons that make up the National Coalition for Caymanians. Even had a fact checker come out and perhaps challenge us on some of what we openly admitted would have been a guesstimate on our part. But in today's media, those posts have been made official. And I just wanted to share the details in comparison to what we said on the 6th of May and what turns out to be the actual ministerial responsibilities, if I may.
Sure.
Andre Ebanks obviously got the premiership, and we anticipated he would also receive financial services, having had responsibility for it under the previous administration. Well, that in fact was the case. He is both Premier, Minister of Financial Services, and what we didn't include, but usually goes hand in hand with financial services, is commerce. So the Premier, Mr. Andre Ebanks, will be Minister responsible for financial services and commerce. His Deputy Premier, the new MP, Mr. Gary Ruddy, will receive tourism and trade development, which is, I think, new nomenclature under this administration. Normally, tourism and transport go hand in hand, but transport was removed from the Deputy Premier, and that ministerial responsibility...
Or best to say, not assigned.
Not assigned, thank you, Frank, thank you. Not assigned to the Deputy Premier, but has been reassigned to the former minister, now once again current Minister for Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure, which also met with our expectations. He has the addition to those four responsibilities of transport, and I'm referring to none other than Mr. J. Ebanks. Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes, we anticipated health, wellness, and sustainability. We were right 2 out of 3. She did receive health and sustainability, but added the environment to her list of ministerial responsibilities. Isaac Rankin, we pegged for youth, sports, culture, and heritage, and we were 100% accurate, but they've also added social development and innovation to those list of responsibilities. So again, he now is responsible for youth, sports, culture, heritage, social development, and innovation. Mr. Michael Miles of Prospect, we anticipated border control and labor. He has now, in fact, been given Caymanian employment and immigration. Now, Caymanian employment is also
a renaming, right?
A renaming or new naming nomenclature. And then immigration. Now, we can only presume that immigration includes border control and the labor component.
Border control includes immigration and customs.
Yeah, exactly. Whilst those traditional names have been removed, they're not contained under the descriptions contained in the media, but Mr. Miles now has Caymanian employment and immigration, which we assume is border control, customs, as well as the work or labor component of immigration.
Labor.
Excuse me.
I think generally that was what Mr. Chris Saunders had when he was Deputy Premier, was labor and border control.
Yes, indeed, you're right. Mr. Ralston Anglin, Minister Anglin, we anticipated education, finance, and economic development, and we were 100% correct. But he has also been added one more ministry, and that Ministry of Training. So he is now Minister of Education, Finance, Economic Development, and Training. Nicholas DaCosta, the new minister, we anticipated Home Affairs and District Administration, and so said, so done. He does have Home Affairs and District Administration, and Mr. J. Ebanks, we already pointed to, having been returned to his former 4 ministries, Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure, but has been added transport to his ministerial responsibilities. As for the parliamentary secretaries under the new administration, a very interesting move here, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, we start with former Premier Wayne Panton, who, as we discussed last week, Tuesday, will not be assigned any ministerial responsibilities, but he will serve as parliamentary secretary responsible for Caymanian employment and immigration, infrastructure, health, environment and sustainability, and financial services and commerce. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Wow, exactly. That's quite a mouthful in terms of parliamentary.
Almost straight across the board there.
Quite right. I mean, it could be Premier all over again. This is the interesting point. Normally, parliamentary secretaries are assigned to one specific minister, and sometimes they are shared between two. But in this case, Mr. Panton will, in fact, serve 4 different ministers, namely Michael Miles, Jay Ebanks, Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes, and the Premier, Andre Ebanks.
What are the areas again?
Caymanian Employment and Immigration, so that's Michael Miles.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, which is Mr. Jay. Health, which is Ms. Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes. Environment, Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes. Sustainability, Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes. Financial Services and Commerce, the Honorable Premier.
Right.
Heather Bodden, another parliamentary secretary, will be responsible for social development, education, training, and tourism. And in so doing, she will serve 3 ministers, namely Isaac Rankin, who has youth, sports, culture, and heritage, as well as social development and innovation. So social development falls under Mr. Isaac. Ralston Anglin has education and training, and Mr. Gary Ruddy has tourism. So those 3 ministers will, Miss Heather Bodden, she will report to, if you will, in her role as parliamentary secretary. And new MP Julie Hunter, who dethroned the longest-serving member of Parliament, the Honorable Makiba Bush, will also serve as parliamentary secretary, responsible for lands, agriculture, housing and infrastructure, education and training, and culture and heritage, thereby serving, again, 3 ministers, namely Jay Ebanks, Ralston Anglin, and Isaac Rankin. So the parliamentary secretaries will definitely be kept very busy under the next term of the National Coalition for Caymanians. And again, the specific ministerial responsibilities were in fact updated. I will say on the transport responsibility, that was missing from all media reports. I had to reach out to the Deputy Premier to get clarification.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the Compass.
No, it wasn't in the Compass, wasn't in CNS.
Well, I wouldn't know about that one.
I know you wouldn't. You don't even open up that web page anymore.
No.
Certainly, well, again, if I had a choice, I wouldn't do either. But, we want to be complete, so one of us has to do it. Again, normally tourism and transport go hand in hand, and I thought the Deputy Premier would have been perhaps the best person to identify where it had been moved to. I just want to thank the Honorable Deputy Premier for taking my call and, again, providing us with some clarification.
Well, at least you can give him kudos for the responsiveness.
No, he was fantastic.
Not one of those got elected and changed my number.
No, his number is still, in fact, the same, and I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the new Deputy Premier. But as we stated, I think last week, and we'll do it again now, certainly the National Coalition for Caymanians, is our government too, and we certainly want to establish a relationship with them and engage in, again, an open door policy as it relates to our government so that we can, in turn, educate the listening audience on all things either political or all things involving the nation. And again, I want to thank the Deputy Premier for taking my call today and, more importantly, for responding, I dare say, in record time.
I'd like to state that I did reach out to several of them, sent some texts and congratulations, personal that is, and also extended an invitation specifically, as informal as WhatsApp is, to the Premier as well, asking him at some point in time, hopefully they'll grace us with his presence here on the program. And I think his response, if I may paraphrase, was that they shall be reaching out to us at some point.
Oh, wonderful.
So again, just wanting the listening audience to know that we are trying to make sure that we can get those persons, I'm sure at the appropriate time on the program so that we can have all the discussions and as another venue, another means of keeping you, the listening public, informed.
Indeed. Received a text, one saying, did Minister Honorable J. Ebanks also have roads and transport under the previous administration? This was after it was transferred to him from previous Minister Kenneth Bryan, because no progress was made on transport by former Minister Kenneth Bryan. I honestly can't remember. That may have been the case. I knew he was certainly responsible for roads, planning, and infrastructure under the previous evolution.
Yeah, you had roads.
But certainly I was not aware he had transport, but it's entirely possible. There were just so many cabinet, rearrangements and reshuffles under the last administration. You'll forgive me if I...
The last 2 or 3.
Yeah, failed to keep track of all of them, but it could be the case. Another text message says, wondering about the old Hyatt buildings at the entrance of Britannia condominiums. The buildings are very dilapidated and looks awful. I recall hearing that there have been an order issued for the buildings to be torn down. Nothing is happening with it, and it's been years now. Is there anything that can be done to get them moving on this? It's a real eyesore. Good question. I have no idea, but certainly something worth following up on. There is the matter of the Britannia condominiums going before the Privy Council, but I suppose that's separate and apart from the buildings that the writer is referring to. Obviously, old Hyatt buildings at the entrance to Britannia. I think the old Hyatt buildings are, frankly, the old Hyatt itself, the lobby, the fountain court, and the hotel proper. Britannia condos are a bit further back, but I get the point of the writer's remarks, and we thank them for sharing it. It is 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. The phone lines are open at 745-2626. We have to pause, take a short commercial break, but don't even think about changing that dial. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come right here on Bobo 103.1 FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you could afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3. Gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shedden Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
When it comes to cooking for my family, I turn to Kirk Market for all our nutritional needs. Whether whipping up a quick stir fry with lean CAB choice beef or preparing a healthy weekend dinner with fresh local snapper, Kirk Market always has exactly what I need. At Kirk Market, I find premium proteins that keep my family healthy, energetic, and always coming back for seconds. Visit Kirk Market today. Bring home the quality and freshness your family deserves. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and experience a world of choice.
Drinking water is vital to our health. At Cayman Water, we use reverse osmosis desalination to ensure safe drinking water. A semi-permeable membrane allows fresh water to pass through, blocking out contaminants. Then, we finish with a post-treatment process and conduct frequent extensive testing to ensure that you get healthy drinking water with an average pH of 7. Not only is water out of your tap safe to drink, it's approximately 400 times less expensive than bottled water. Help to reduce plastics and save our planet. Cayman Water cares. Learn more at CaymanWater.com.
Shirts, pants, or linens. When you want them clean, just drop them off at Island Cleaners. Island Cleaners is a full-service dry cleaner, meaning you name it, they clean it. Professional shirt service, fluff and fold laundry, and more. Even drape and area rug cleaning and alterations, from quick hem jobs to resizing dresses. Island Cleaners, your one stop for everything clean. Artco Drive off Shedden Road. Ask about VIP and prepaid discounts.
Hello, pet parents. We're Cayman Vets, Cayman's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit CaymanVets.com. Cayman Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. The keywords Straight Talk Radio Show is the one to look for on either YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. But also, if you are on the ACT Cruise Tourism page, by all means, you can reach out to us and either send us a message over Facebook, or you can email us at host@straighttalk.ky, or you can call us 745-2626, or you can WhatsApp us at 928-2562. We have had a caller trying to get through to us both during the break and again just moments ago. I would encourage them to reach out.
Try again.
Try again. Looks like the line is ringing, but then it's gone again. Ellio, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah,
I also have one as well.
Just chatting as I heard about the old Hyatt building. I remember having these discussions while I was in Parliament and remembered some either legislation being introduced or some amendments being made. But either way, just looking it up, it says the Cayman Islands have legal provisions to address derelict buildings. The primary legislation governing this issue is the Property and in bracket, Miscellaneous Provision Act, which empowers local authorities to take action against properties that are neglected or pose safety hazards. Under this act, officials can issue notices requiring property owners to repair or demolish derelict structures. Failure to comply with these notices can result in penalties or further enforcement actions. Additionally, the Development and Planning Law provides guidelines for property maintenance and development, ensuring that buildings meet certain standards and do not become public nuisances. Local planning authorities can intervene when properties fall into disrepair, especially if they affect the surrounding community's safety or aesthetics. And I can think of one or two of those. I mean, I mentioned some weeks ago, not to pick on anyone, but again, where the club is on, what is it called? I always call it School Road. Mm-hmm. Anyway, where the Bananas is. I mean, that, all that building there, it's like, come on. I mean, this is just terrible. I think all those things need to be fixed and just call it as it is. Mm-hmm. And I really, this is saying that we can obviously contact the planning department, make the report. I would hope that somebody has their eyes open, can actually see it, but for sure that's the case. I did get a request for you to, again, repeat what the various parliamentary secretaries' responsibilities would be. Sure. Specifically in terms of Mr. Panton.
No, absolutely. I'd be happy to do so. But I do see we do have a caller on the line, so sure. We'll come back to that. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening, guys. How you all doing?
Very well, ma'am, and yourself. Thank you for your call.
You're welcome. I just thought it might be important for the general public for you all to discuss what things, especially the parliamentary secretaries, will do that will differ them from the minister, or, just so that people understand why there's been this appointment of 3 in some cases to particular portfolios.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, awesome question.
Be happy to answer that for you, but thank you very much for the question.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, again, just very quickly from former experience, sure. I think we both may have served as parliamentary secretaries. Yourself, before the nomenclature was coined, I think you were a councillor before that.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a background. So for example, when I got elected, we still only had the four. Was it the four? Either 4 or 5, but I think it was 4 ministers, and the other 3 and all that. The new constitution was just coming in, and because that had not been all formalized, we couldn't be appointed as ministers, and we were made ministerial councillors.
Mm-hmm.
I guess somebody decided saying junior ministers was just too much, Austin.
Yeah, they didn't like that. I think the ministers themselves,
they didn't like that.
It was a bit of an ego trip.
Oh, I can assure you, there's a lot of ego. You got to try to leave it at the door.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were called ministerial councillors. Now that you have all 7 ministers, they've changed that name now to parliamentary secretaries.
To make it more in line with what goes on in Westminster. That's the same term that the Brits use for backbenchers or otherwise. Parliamentary secretary is the more...
And then there would be a question because
English term.
Yeah, one of the things in this particular case, as with a lot of things in Parliament, for example, nobody gets a real formal job description, right? Like you don't get a formal job description that says, hey, here's what you should be doing as a member of the opposition. There are some things and stuff that you can read and learn from precedents and conventions, but there's no formal job description like you'll get, I'm head of a particular department in the government. So I think that's very important. I say that amongst other things to mention that it varies depending on how much the minister wants to employ that particular parliamentary secretary or ministerial councillor. Because you might have some ministers that's happy to have you attend a lot of the meetings, engaging even some of the decision making and, run. And then you might just have some that want to use it as go for this, go for that, and bring it back to me and I'll make all the decisions. So it varies. But I would like to say that I think having those junior ministers, parliamentary secretary, whatever it is you want to refer to it as, I think it's good. It's good to be able to know that you have those persons employed and having 2 heads better than one. Mr. Miller used to say all the time. He says 2 heads are always better than one. And I think
more meat.
Yeah, and in this particular case, what we're seeing now is that, as my colleague mentioned, you used to fall just under one minister per se. Yeah. But now it seems as if there's a bit of a stretch across all ministerial or many ministers, and it remains to be seen whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But for now, it sounds like it's something that could work.
Well, just to add or complement what you just said, the caller asked, what is the difference between the role of parliamentary secretary from minister itself? The minister sets, obviously, policy, and the role of the parliamentary secretary is to see that policy or ministerial direction is in fact carried out. As my colleague pointed out, that includes working very closely with the civil service and the respective ministry personnel, attending many of the meetings, in some cases, obviously, speaking on behalf of the minister, and from a parliament standpoint, much like the role of the traditional backbencher, to defend the policy positions of their respective ministers. Again, because our democracy is based on the Westminster system, ministers aren't supposed to get their hands dirty, aren't supposed to get involved in the heave and thrust and pull of politics. That's what the backbenchers' roles are traditionally used for, though we had at least one former minister and former deputy premier, I think of Kenneth Bryan, who enjoyed the debating and the fighting. But in traditional senses, that is the role of the backbench, i.e., or the parliamentary secretary. I think it's very important to point out there's significant differences that they can't change policy. So they are working at the discretion and guidance of the minister that they are obviously responsible for in their various subjects. They can't deviate from the policy plan, but they're there to ensure that policy plan is in fact implemented through all the various stages.
And to supplement what you're saying, I will stress the fact that it varies a little bit depending on that particular minister. So to my colleague's point, definitely the minister is the one with the constitutional responsibility for that particular portfolio, the only one that can sign off, etc. But nothing precludes him or her from even sitting with that parliamentary secretary, getting their views in terms of shaping policy as well. It's really going to be something that varies depending on the minister. and that relationship that they have with the parliamentary secretary, because there is no formal description. As long as the actual constitutional responsibility of signing off and giving the final okay, etc., is left to the minister, it really varies and depends on that relationship between the parliamentary secretary and the specific minister.
Indeed. We were asked to repeat what the parliamentary responsibilities are, starting, of course, with former Premier Wayne Panton. Again, as stated, he will serve as parliamentary secretary responsible for Caymanian employment and immigration, infrastructure, health, environment and sustainability, and financial services and commerce. These very broad, specific subject areas will see him serving 4 different ministers, including the current Premier, Honorable Andre Ebanks, the Minister for Immigration and Caymanian Employment, Mr. Michael Miles, the Minister for Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, Mr. J. Ebanks, and Minister Catherine Ebanks Wilkes for Health, Environment and Sustainability. Just for completeness, Ms. Heather Bodden will serve as Parliamentary Secretary for Social Development, Education and Training and Tourism. That makes her poised to serve 3 ministers, namely the Honorable Deputy Premier Gary Ruddy, the Honorable Isaac Rankin, and the Honorable Ralston Anglin. And last but certainly not least, new MP Julie Hunter will serve as Parliamentary Secretary, responsible for lands, agriculture, housing and infrastructure, education and training, and culture and heritage. That means she too will serve 3 ministers, namely Minister J. Ebanks, Minister Ralston Anglin, and Minister Isaac Rankin.
And thank you for that. I know that you and I had actually talked about chatting on this issue a little bit, but we never really got to it, and perhaps now is a good time. But in terms of the selection, and again, keeping it in summary, it is important to understand that when, in this particular case, you've got the PPM that got in that had a number majority in terms of parties or any one particular grouping. So if we look at CINP as a grouping, CCP as a grouping, and Independence as a grouping, then PPM clearly got the majority. That said, another majority is the fact that the majority of those persons were not PPM and they were still elected as well. And persons can very much consider that that also means that there was a large majority of the general populace that didn't vote for PPM. So these individuals would have formed the coalition and they would all have agreed on who's going to be the premier. And that's the first thing in the Constitution that takes place, where they get up and they vote for the premier, and then the premier in turn will go about assigning the various cabinet positions as well as parliamentary secretary. And obviously, they should be doing that in consultation with that group to make sure that everybody's happy. So when we see this change in the parliamentary secretaries, now going from stretching from beyond one minister to several different ministers, somewhere either in the premier's thinking and or most likely in combination with all of them, they have decided as a group that that would be a better way to go. And again, experimental, but that doesn't mean it isn't something that's probably going to work much better. It could do.
A interesting observation was just shared on WhatsApp that I didn't consider, but it says, do the 3 parliamentary secretaries get paid 3 times if you're the parliamentary secretary for 3 ministries? If the answer is yes, then it could be a way for the other MLAs being paid at the same level of a minister. That's a very interesting question. Whilst the parliamentary secretary does in fact receive a pay grade point on the civil service salary scale, so you have an MP, obviously the parliamentary secretary receives an MP salary plus I think a notch above for parliamentary secretary. Likewise, so do ministers, and likewise leader of opposition and the premier. Each of those are differing pay grades, but it is a very good question if those parliamentary secretaries who are serving 3 or 4 ministers, if their wages will reflect upgrades per each minister. I think that's something worth following up on.
That is something worth following up on. I mean, it's not impossible that you could be getting a different grade in terms of your pay because you now have that many much more portfolios to deal with, and that could have been a part of the reason. But as far as I know, let's just go back to what I know traditionally. Traditionally, we would have had a front bench, which to the best of my knowledge was somewhere around four or five persons. And again, then you had the ministerial councillors, and then you had some of those backbench members that were not necessarily councillors. So there would have been a little bit of a grade difference there. But I think that particular author raises a very interesting point, and that is it going to get a further increase because they're now stretching beyond more than one minister? On one hand, yes, that's possible. And I could also see where somebody could say, no, it can remain the same. We have to follow up on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely will. Currently, there are, well, if you include the premier, there are 8 cabinet ministers. Traditionally, there are 7 cabinet ministers plus a premier or leader. But under the present constitutional framework, we have 8 cabinet ministers and 3 parliamentary secretaries. And just going back to the wages, whether they're going to be paid 3 and 4 times per ministerial responsibility or per minister, again, this obviously will run itself contrary right off to the bat to points that were agreed by both the CCP and the CINP. Last week, we were examining the manifestos, anticipating what could be what could form part of the strategic policy statement. Obviously, today we will continue that in some way. But it would be curious because both of those administrations highlighted fiscal prudence and controlling public spending as part of their manifesto promises.
I would agree.
So it'll be very interesting to see whether, again, right off the bat, if we are looking at increasing the pay for either one group or the other. But I just want to say the listener does ask a very poignant question, and it's something we'd have to follow up on to find out.
Yeah, we wouldn't know, so we have to follow up. But to the point of that, I mean, you know, it would be interesting. Let's put that word in caption. It would be interesting if that's the case, that they're going to be getting more pay, considering the financial situation that everybody has stated is not good coming into government with a $26 million deficit or whatever. And I recall that when we were elected there, again under Mr. Bush, he decreased everybody's pay because we were in difficult financial times. We found ourselves in a deficit position as well. So there was a decrease in the pay. So it would be surprising if people are doing anything now to accommodate an increase in the pay. Interesting, to say the least.
Indeed.
But yeah, that's how we go about doing the structuring. And again, I say that just to highlight that, again, there's nothing of a real big formal process. It's a case of adults being able to sit in a room in terms of deciding who's going to go into that cabinet and being able to sit, discuss, negotiate on who's going to take what particular portfolio. And once they can agree on that, hopefully on some level of consensus, and the premier signs off on it, then they go down to the parliament or go to the governor, and he hands them the list of who's going to be the minister and what respective portfolios they're going to have.
Right.
And hopefully we would hope as a country that would be, amongst other things, assigned based on the qualifications or expertise or definitely interest and passion of those specific individuals. But it varies.
It does, indeed. Another question coming in via WhatsApp asks, do you know if any other MP other than Michael Miles will be setting up district councils? I think the short answer is no. We have not had any clarification what the plans are for MPs. I know district councils were talked about on the campaign trail. Certainly Michael Miles was being one of those, though we remember Mr. Jordan Rivers, who was unsuccessful, but he certainly spoke highly on that, and certainly that was going to be his ambition. But I think no is the short answer. We don't know. Maybe you do, Ellio, but I'm speaking for you in this instance. Do you know of any other MP other than Michael Miles will be setting up district councils?
Well, I mean, I would really have, well, first of all, I could say off the top of my head, no, but I just want to engage in a little bit of a discussion there, because there was the whole issue of legislation and everything being passed about the setting up formally of district councils, right? This was a significant long period of time. Now, I don't really recall off the top of my head, was all that actually passed and approved, or was it a case that it was just set on the back burner? To the best of my knowledge, it was never really formally approved, Because I know, for example, Mr. Bush, as one of those persons, said that doing that was just going to introduce a lot more politics. You were going to get another layer of persons down below who, again, they'll be campaigning over the next 4 years. He said something to that effect. While, and not that I necessarily disagree with that, because I think anytime you put something in place, you have to bear in mind that everything will start to create its own level of energy. You know, there are going to be someone and persons on that council that will say, hey, you know, maybe I want to run. And then you have to ask, how does that work for Austin Harris, who's there in one particular constituency, and you have somebody who's campaigning arguably against him while he's still in office. So there's all of that, but to the best of my knowledge, it was set aside. So if you're saying to me now that Michael Miles is going to go and set up district councils, well, you can set something up as long as you're not suggesting that it's formal and you don't have legislation for it. So I think the first thing is to confirm where we're at in relation to the legislation.
I always thought the advisory district council, I'd have to pull it up, but I thought the advisory district councils were in fact stipulated in the 2009 Constitution, but that was prior to the introduction of single-member constituencies.
But you would need relevant legislation and regulations to deal with the council. I don't recall that happening.
No, well, I can tell you that hasn't happened. Certainly, the question was raised when I was in office, and the then Premier Sir Alden, I remember him stating that, well, it can't be implemented as per the Constitution because that obviously doesn't take into context the single-member constituencies. And somehow there was a thinking that with the introduction of single-member constituencies, that those advisory district councils and the rules surrounding it would somehow change dramatically. Frankly, I never understood it when he said it then, and I still don't understand it now, but it's certainly worth follow-up.
I think what he was saying is that, again, when it was being discussed, it would have been under the multi-member, which is what it was when I was elected.
And the 5 traditional districts as we once knew them.
Right. And again, even then, when you had 7 persons at large.
7 if you consider Cameron and Little Cayman.
7 candidates, for example, at large for, let's say, an area of Georgetown, you could see that it would even tend to at least be a glitter on the ground as to why you would want to have district council to help you to manage that particular area. But now that you have SMCs or single-member constituencies, again, one might argue, is it really necessary? But either way, that is something else we'll make a note of to follow up. What is the position in terms of legislation in relation to district councils? Because if all of that has not been formalized, then he would only be doing something in a very informal way. All right?
Well, there's a wonderful principle called crowdsourcing, and it seems to be live and active here today on the program. I just got another comment saying that the West Bay MPs are currently trying to decide whether they should have 4 councils or if they should have a combined council for the district. So these discussions are live and ongoing, but we want to thank the listening audience for obviously being part of, as we say, our single greatest resource.
Yeah, and again, that's fine. It's only a question to me of, you know, whether this is something that's formalized or informal, whether this is something legislative or not.
Got another question. It says this might be a bit off topic, but I want to know if there's any legal requirement for a business to respond to requests made by the Economic and Statistics Office. The requested information and forms are arduous. Well, the short answer is yes. Businesses are legally required to respond to a request from the Economic and Statistics Office. And I also believe individuals are, at least in the context of things like a national census. If, you know, enumerators come to your door and ask you questions particular to the census and otherwise, there is an obligation for individuals to respond to them as well. But certainly there is a legal requirement for businesses. Obviously, I have to find the relevant law that relates to that. But the short answer is yes.
I would just supplement that by saying to the earlier point that you made, you'll probably find that the issue again is enforcement, because I know of companies that has not responded. But again, what happens if there's no enforcement? Like we have a law that says you shouldn't throw trash.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. But nobody wants to do the paperwork, so nothing happens.
Well, the same writer who initiated the question on advisory district councils went on to say, if no one else does it, then why were people being misled during the election? Well, no surprises. Their election campaigns are filled with all sorts of promises designed to, win hearts and minds. And, at administration after administration, we can count perhaps on one hand the number of promises, perhaps still not fulfilled, but that's what a election campaign looks like.
Let me see if I can do a quick search here.
Yeah, but certainly we will look into that and add it to the list. We know Michael Miles had promised it. I don't know whether or not he has begun initiating it, though I suspect that too will come. Again, from the listening audience, apparently the 4 West Bay MPs are currently in deliberation with each other right now, trying to determine whether they should have 4 individual district advisory councils or if they should just have one that takes into consideration the interest of West Bay as a district as a whole. I think these are legitimate conversations to be had. Again, I think in order to manage expectations, the first and foremost thing on the government's mind has to be developing a plan of action. They are 3 different groups coming together to form a single government, ergo a coalition. That means 5 different manifestos and lists of promises that the government is going to have to obviously find common ground on. It is unreasonable to assume that everybody's promise and everybody's manifesto will get included in the strategic policy statement, because we saw that in the last evolution of government, and we got absolutely nowhere with that other than, starting off a new administration in deficit. The overspending was ridiculous, and that's what's going to happen in those scenarios. So the first thing we can expect from the government is coming up with a plan, and then thereafter we'll see, obviously how much of those election promises are in fact followed through on and fulfilled. But
I think we were right in relation to these councils.
Yes.
So the Cayman Islands have legislation providing for the establishment of district councils, specifically the Advisory District Councils Act 2011. Was enacted to create councils in each electoral district to advise elected members of parliament. However, this law has not been brought into force.
Well, let's stick a pin there because we got 10 seconds. Got to go after a break, but we'll come back and we'll finish that train of thought. Keep it locked. 59 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Straight Talk continues next.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News. World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The Israeli-American hostage Idan Alexander has been reunited with his family in Israel, hours after being released from 19 months of captivity by Hamas. Television pictures show him smiling as he embraces his parents and siblings at a military base. Hugo Bashega is in Tel Aviv.
It was something very different from the releases that happened earlier this year that angered many people here in Israel who felt the hostages were being humiliated by Hamas. Today, there were no cameras, no crowds. He was handed over to the Red Cross and then transferred to the Israeli military before being taken to Israel. And here in Hostage Square, there was a crowd. People celebrated with every update. So clearly here, a moment of joy, but also a moment of hope for the families of the hostages who remain in captivity in Gaza.
There are renewed international calls for a ceasefire in Gaza in the wake of the latest hostage release. The International Committee of the Red Cross described the humanitarian crisis as catastrophic. A famine alert system has been raised to its highest level, more than 2 months after Israel began blocking all aid deliveries to Gaza. The UN spokesman Stéphane Dujarric called for an end to the fighting and the blockade.
The Secretary-General renews his urgent call for an immediate, permanent ceasefire and an immediate and unconditional release of all remaining hostages. Hostages must be treated humanely and with dignity. He calls on all parties to immediately ensure the rapid, the unhindered, and the safe humanitarian relief, including the delivery of critical services for all civilians in need. Aid in Gaza and anywhere around the world is not negotiable.
The Qatar-based broadcaster Al Jazeera says it's resuming work in the Palestinian territories after a 4-month ban was lifted. The Palestinian Authority, which governs the Israeli-occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, had accused Al Jazeera of incitement. The TV channel said the ban was an attempt to deter coverage of a security operation mounted by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Dozens of white South Africans have arrived in the US, where the government is to grant them refugee status. President Trump has said the white farmers are escaping persecution. Here's Nomi Iqbal.
The Trump administration says that Afrikaners are hugely discriminated against in South Africa, claiming that there is, to quote the Trump administration, a white genocide happening, and that therefore they deserve this status. Now, of course, the South African government denies this and says that there hasn't been any land seizures, as the Trump administration is claiming, that the police data also does not back the numbers that the Trump administration is claiming.
World news from the BBC. US markets have surged to their highest level in several months in response to major tariff cuts agreed by China and the United States. The Dow Jones closed up by 2.8%. Early on Monday, the two sides announced an easing of a trade war that's caused global economic turmoil. President Trump said the initial agreement reached in Geneva amounted to a total reset in trade relations. The UN Secretary-General has welcomed the announcement by Kurdish separatists of an end to 40 years of armed struggle against Turkey. Antonio Guterres said if the decision by the PKK was implemented, it would mark an important step towards peace. Turkey's neighbours, Syria and Iraq, also hailed the move. The PKK said it was disbanding because it hoped to achieve its goals through democratic means. The prosecution in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs has argued that the rapper and music producer used his status to commit acts of violence and blackmail his sexual partners. The music mogul has pleaded not guilty. From New York, Neda Taufik.
In their opening statements, prosecutors said Diddy called himself the king and used his money and inner circle to feed his every desire and cover up his crimes. They said the evidence would show he threatened, drugged, lied, and used violence to force his former partner, the R&B singer Cassie, and another woman referred to as Jane, to engage in days-long sexual performances with male prostitutes. Diddy's lawyer claimed the women were all willing participants and later motivated by money.
Australia's re-elected Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is due to be sworn in for a second term. His centre-left Labour Party defied the odds in a snap election, winning a surprise majority. Key issues included the cost of living and a struggling healthcare system. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, and myself, Ellio Solomon. 6:06 up here in the studio, 24 minutes to go before we close off the program. So make sure you send in your texts or give us a call on 745-2626. Again, that's 745-2626 or 928-2562 if you want to go ahead and send us a voice message or a text. Just prior to the break, we were chatting about the district councils and hearing that one of the ministers is setting it up. And again, the issue was, are you able to do that or not? And again, this was saying that the Cayman Islands has legislation providing for the establishment of district councils, specifically the Advisory District Council Act of 2011. It was enacted to create councils in each electoral district to advise elected members of parliament. However, this law has not been brought into force, and as such, no official district councils have been established under it. The Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009 mandates in Section 119 that a law should provide for the establishment, functions, and jurisdiction of councils for each electoral district to operate as advisory bodies to elected members of the Legislative Assembly. While the 2011 Act was passed to fulfill this constitutional requirement, it has not been implemented. In 2021, the Constitutional Commission reviewed the Advisory District Councils Act 2011 and recommended against bringing it into force in its current form. The Commission highlighted concerns about the composition and appointment process of the councils, suggesting that the legislation be reconsidered and updated to reflect current constitutional developments and to ensure greater community engagement. Therefore, while the legal framework for district councils exists, the necessary steps to activate and operationalize these councils have not been completed. As a result, there are currently no functioning district councils in the Cayman Islands. So again, as we were saying, we're correct that if he is setting it up, then either there's two things. He's starting to set it up knowing that him and his government will be quickly bringing this into force, amendments or otherwise, or it's simply a case that I think he wants to start to do something and starting to work in that process in the first place. But either way, if that's the one, then he would actually be working outside any particular piece of legislation at this point.
Absolutely.
Because there's actually nothing in force.
That's right. And if the advisory district councils are to receive any degree of a stipend, much like any of the other boards that already exist, then to my colleague's point, you will need legislation to enact and give power and authority to those respective district councils, which has not happened. So that has to happen first before we can see any advisory district councils, coming off the page, so to speak.
And just to underscore it again, that these councils are there to advise the ministers, the members of parliament, let's put it that way.
The MPs.
So again, even from a check and balance for you and I, the general public, we would want to know exactly who is advising you. And whether that has had a proper process as well, right? We don't want to know that the wrong person is advising our MPs. So you want to make sure that the legislation is all approved and properly vetted.
Yes, indeed. We did get another, not a question, but a comment really that allows, again, some dialogue. It says, back in the old days, the permanent secretary did what the cabinet secretary does now. Well, no. And we don't want to confuse permanent secretary with the previous discussion of parliamentary secretary. The permanent secretary is...
So the names are similar.
They are similar, but the permanent secretary is the former nomenclature for what is today called chief officer. So the person who runs the ministry, you got chief officer and deputy chief officer. Once upon a time, they would have been called permanent secretary, not to be confused with parliamentary secretary. One works for the minister, the other works for the civil service on behalf of the policy statement for the elected arm of government.
Right.
So that is the existing case. Another question coming from the listening audience, perhaps this ties into the district council discussion. Just curious, what happens now to Sabrina Turner's constituency office at the top of Marina Drive? I see it now blocked off, and so I would imagine that this might mean it's now closed. But it is interesting to know why this is. It lends to lots of other questions. One, did government own or rent the building? Well, no. As I understood it, the office that the former MP for Prospect and Minister of Health, she occupied a building that used to be her home, that she then converted into her Prospect constituency office. Government would have paid her an allowance to run that office, but not so much by way of rent, but probably in staff or otherwise. The second question is, if so, shouldn't there have been some formal notice to the public that it is officially closed, and or information shared to the public on where the new constituency office is located? Well, again, if the property isn't owned by government, is owned privately by the former minister, and in terms of the new location for the new constituency office, that will be a question to be addressed to the current MP for Prospect.
But that raises a very important question. Government allots a certain amount of money for the various members of parliament to go ahead and rent an office. And again, this was one of the reasons why I didn't support the single member constituencies, is because it was going to add additional costs. So, for example, when we had multi-member for Georgetown, we technically had two offices. One party had one, the other party had another. You can see that technically now every single member single member constituency, 19 of them, could have its own office.
Mm-hmm.
For the person who gets elected. But you were given a certain amount of money to rent an office. Now, what precludes a member from saying, I'm making renovations to a building that I own, and in this particular case, your home, and the government's still paying the rent for that?
Well, again, I don't believe government goes as far as to say it's paying the rent. It may provide assistance for it.
It provides a certain amount of money.
A certain amount of money that is presumed to go to staff of that office.
Well, I remember getting funds for rent.
Okay.
You got funds for rent, and you got funds for at least for a receptionist, because we rented an office, and I can remember renting one, for example, in the, what's it called, Cayman Center. So we rented an office, and in order to do that, Mike and I had to combine. I don't remember what that specific allowance is called, but either way, we combined our allowance to pay the rent.
I thought it was allowance is the word they used.
Yeah, it could be, but I just want to stress that I'm not 100% confident in what the nomenclature was, but we combined that allowance, and we also, so we paid the rent with that, and then we also had a receptionist. And I say that because if I'm wrong, someone would tell me, but nothing precludes you from taking that same money and paying yourself.
Yes.
If you're using your house or something else.
Yes.
And that in itself is something that perhaps should be looked into as well. But that said, on the point of Miss Sabrina closing her office, I mean, she's no longer a member of parliament. She would have been renting that place or utilizing it for the purposes of being a member of parliament, to make sure that you, the general public, could visit her there and on a regular time or whenever she did clinic. And it's only right that she has a right to close that now. And you could give some notice. Or she could also keep it open. If she intended to run, she could keep it open as a regular citizen who intends to run and still continue to service you. But she has all the rights to be able to close that office. And definitely, if government was giving an allowance in which that was being used to pay, that would clearly would cease now.
Yes.
She would no longer have those funds.
That's right. But again, the property was never owned by the government. It was privately owned. And to my colleague's point, what has happened is completely within the remit of the former member, and we have to wait and see what the new MP for Prospect will determine in terms of office space. I am delighted to know that, well, I'll say this much, commercial space is few and far between in the constituency of Prospect, though we see some developments happening on the site that currently houses Tim Hortons, and then further down on the
At least
on the bypass road, there's some more development going on across the Red Bay Primary Plaza. So hopefully some of those buildings will get erected soon, and that of course will increase the available commercial space in those two respective constituencies, which will facilitate it. I know when we were looking at it at first, the closest commercial spot that would have been available to us would have been Grand Harbor, but that falls in Georgetown East. So again, just an example that not every constituency has the facilities or infrastructure to house these things.
They can rent the office space.
Yeah, exactly. 16 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock is the time. The phone lines are open, 745-2626, or you can reach out to us via WhatsApp, 928-2562. Certainly the WhatsApp line has been very active today. We thank our listening audience for the number of interesting questions and statements that have been provided and asked. And whereas, of course, we don't have the answers to the questions, we will certainly seek to follow up on them, one of which will be for the parliamentary secretaries who now have responsibility that spans multiple ministers. Will their wages reflect the number of ministers in which they serve? Again, that is a very good question, and it certainly requires follow-up. But we do thank the listening audience for those questions.
And I think we already have the one on the district councils.
Yes. Oh, there was one other one. This was something that you raised, and I want to see if I can find it. You asked the question at the beginning of the program, where do we stand on the English language test for foreigners and persons who have a work permit in the Cayman Islands? Somebody shared with us also at some point throughout the course of the show an article that appeared in Friday's The Standard. It's a UK online newspaper with the headline, the immigration white paper, due to be published next week, will lay out Sir Keir Starmer's plan to get tougher on migration rules in the wake of reform of the UK's win at the local elections. Under this white paper plan, migrants will have to learn English to an A-level standard in order to get work visas under the new immigration reforms. So we are not alone here in the Cayman Islands.
But I'm not. I will say I'm not sure you have to go to A-level standard, but
but
an O would be all right.
An O level perhaps would be fine here in the Cayman Islands. Certainly, it would be an improvement on what
we have now. In many instances,
what presently stands.
Is that a caller?
We did, but they didn't stick around, so we'd encourage them to call back.
Under constituency allowance, this is what I have. Elected members of parliament in the Cayman Islands receives a constituency allowance of $5,000 per month, totaling $60,000 annually.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, I will remind people, remember now, when we got single member constituency, it increased. That's $5,000 a month for all 19.
Yeah.
Totaling $60,000 annually. Multiply that by 19 to cover expenses related to running their district offices. This allowance is intended for costs such as rent, utilities, office supplies, and general maintenance. Notably, there is no legal requirement for MPs to provide detailed accounts or receipts for how this allowance is spent. The funds are dispersed automatically alongside their salaries, and MPs have discretion over their use. Some MPs choose to operate from personal or party-affiliated spaces, potentially relocating portions of the allowance to other constituent services. This lack of mandated financial reporting has raised concerns about transparency and accountability. Auditor General Sue Winspear highlighted that requiring MPs to submit claims or evidence of expenditures would enhance public trust and oversight regarding the use of these public funds. Additionally, MPs are entitled to constituency assistants, whose salaries are funded separately from constituency allowance. Ministers may have 2 full-time and 1 part-time assistant, while other MPs are entitled to 1 full-time and 1 part-time assistant. So, needless to say, you are talking about a situation that, to me, needs to be remedied. Is you have a call, we go straight to the call and come back to that. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello.
One moment, I was putting it on timer.
Hi there. I need you to turn down your radio.
She says you're putting it on silent.
Yes, that's what I was doing, sir.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Am I on air already?
You are.
Ma'am.
Oh, okay, that was fast. Hi, Ellio and Austin.
Hi there.
This is my first time calling.
All right. I hope it won't be the last.
Yes.
I was actually waiting to hear you guys say the number for the last hour and didn't realize once I started dialing, when Ellio just said it, that I had it saved in my phone all along.
Fantastic.
So, but it's great to catch up with you guys and chime in the conversation. I'm glad you brought up the speaking the English language on the show, because we know, well, I know personally that's a huge issue, and I've been seeing it more and more often. And even today, but last week I had an issue where someone was speaking in their local dialect and not wanting to their native dialect, and not wanting to speak English in a manner of speaking when they realize you have an understanding of their dialect. And we don't want to exclude people by not being dialect friendly, but we also don't want a second language becoming a primary language in Cayman, where we saw in the U.S. that was a huge debate many years ago, that there was actually a movement to try to get Spanish recognized as an official second language in the United States, and it was eventually rejected. But like I said, we have to have a balance. But I'm glad that there is a recognition that we need to maintain that English remain the first language, and people that come here that have a native language are firmly able to understand that they have to learn English and communicate in English, because this is an English jurisdiction,
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And you guys wanted to say something?
No. Just agreeing.
We're agreeing with you.
Yes, and so I'm glad that came out. Something else I wanted to touch on also. The stipend thing that you guys are referring to for the MPs' offices. Yeah, I've heard a lot of that going around too. Voters are being very concerned about that, as you guys realize, by having the discussion and maybe highlighting it. Now the new government will try to put something into place where that is concerned, because it does look as though it's an abuse of resources that allocated to the MPs to have offices for constituents to be able to go to those offices at a convenient location in their respective districts. Now, as you guys said, there's not always properties that are available in each district that could have MPs open up as a space. But nevertheless, I know some voters are frustrated because some districts do not have an office, and some voters who don't drive or are not too keen or too accessible for public transportation have to travel some distance to get to some of these offices. So I'm glad you guys brought that up.
Yeah.
And something else I want to say, but I'll continue to listen, and if I have any other thoughts, I'll call back.
Yes, please do.
And again, welcome as a caller, and we look forward to hearing your comments and questions going forward.
Yeah, and please keep calling, and I'll just say the WhatsApp number in case you don't have that as well, in case you want to utilize that. It's 928-2562. But this number in terms of constituency allowance to $5,000 a month has clearly increased. I don't remember it being that much. I'm inclined
previously it was 4,000.
I believe it was 3,000 when I was there.
There you go. So it's gone up incrementally by at least 1,000.
It's almost doubled.
Yes.
But here's the issues, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are interested. The problem here is being identified is that you have $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year for that parliamentarian for each specific constituency. That gives you about $1.14 million being spent every year just on constituency offices. Where that becomes a problem is that there's no accounting required. There's nobody having to come in and file the receipts on how much you're paying for rent, how much you're paying. No, it's just kind of given as part of the salary, if you like, of that particular MP. And you can see where that becomes a problem. And let me just identify it in case you need it. Maybe I could find an office somewhere for $2,000 a month. Possibly. There's a little small room somewhere that I could rent for $2,000 a month and have a receptionist in there and paying him or her $1,500 a month, which means it's $3,500. But yet, an MP could technically go and rent their own house for $4,000 and then put the $1,000 for a receptionist, assuming they have one. Nothing is required. On this particular space, that if you were to evaluate it, maybe the space that that person is renting from themselves wouldn't be valued at $4,000 or $5,000 a month. So this is where it's subject to abuse, and you would have heard, again, the comments that I read from the Auditor General, the past Auditor General, Ms. Winspear, that you need to have proper accounting. And I'm surprised that that's not happening, because especially this day and age, we would think that transparency, that accounting process is only seem normal and proper to say, I'm spending public funds here and I need to be able to be held accountable for it. So that might be something, again, that hopefully the new government will say, hey, let's see if we can make some positive changes with this, so that this is not only, and not again even suggesting that it is being abused.
Yeah.
But they say not only must justice be done, but it must be seen to be done.
Yeah.
So if you are doing things right, let's do it in a proper process. So not only is it being done, but it can be seen to be done.
Well, taking it back to in the few moments that we have left on the English language test for the Cayman Islands, whenever we engage in conversation about rules for work permit holders or PR holders and whatnot, persons start, throwing around statements like racist, xenophobic, or otherwise. But we oftentimes remind folks that, in Europe or in Britain, this is the whole basis behind Brexit.
Right.
In the U.S., Make America Great, same argument, same conversation. But just looking at the Standard newspaper article on the English language test, taking a look at the immigration white paper of the current UK government, their goal is to make it at a minimum at an A-level standard. The present standard is a GCSE standard, so a high school equivalent diploma of speaking English. We suggest perhaps an O-level might be sufficient. But interestingly enough, the government by Keir Starmer, there's a statement here, the government's immigration white paper is also designed to bring down the record levels of migration to Britain. So the same work permit numbers, the same permanent residence, the same status conversation that we have in Cayman, Britain is having the same thing with a view of bringing that down as well. I just thought it's important to say.
Yeah, and
it is 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. We've got 15 seconds left. Ellio.
Well, I just want to say that I want to continue the discussion there, because if you're talking about putting things on A level, we don't want the opposite. We don't want to see people abused. We want to make sure we create opportunities as well, but we'll discuss it tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening. See you here.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.